Okay, so I've been asked just to do a video on posting profiles. So even though I'm not really doing AX predominantly at this stage, I've started my own startup. I just thought I'd give a little video just to this topic just because it's so important for understanding AX. So pretty much what will happen is the way that Microsoft structures the way that they structure their actual application is that you've got concepts such as the subledger and the ledger. So the subledger needs to then take all of the information from it and put that information into the ledger. So ultimately the general ledger will hold all of the financial information for a company. So that'll hold the income statement, it'll hold the balance sheet, cash flow statement. All of the major reporting tools are derived from the ledger and the financial transactions that occur in it. So what is the subledger? Subledger would be accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed assets. Pretty much all of these other modules are subledgers, and the way that they communicate with the ledger is that they go through a process of posting profiles. So what you define in the subledger and how you'd like the transactions from the subledger to flow through to the ledger are governed by the posting profiles. So if we go through accounts payable, they're always generally located in setup under posting profiles. However, when we get to inventory, you'll see it's a bit more complicated. Project management too can be a little bit more complicated. So let's go through the easy ones for now. So accounts payable, and you go vendor posting profiles. So what we can see here is you can set up a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay, so what will happen is Microsoft's allowed you to say, let's create a new one here. So we'll call it test. And if we want, we can just say all. What this means is that every single vendor will then follow these rules. So if I want it, so a summary account. So what the vendor really does, so just bear with me, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because it's quite a complex subject, but I'll just give a very brief overview, and then if anyone wants questions they can just ask them in the comments. So the vendor posting profiles indicates what happens when you have a vendor and you owe them money. So how do you want to reflect that in your ledger? So your summary account would be going to a creditor's control account. So a creditor's control account, you'd have to make that main account in the ledger, and that would indicate how much money you owe other people. Then when you settle against that, so let's say for example a vendor invoices you for 200 bucks, you now owe that vendor 200 bucks. When they settle, they no longer owe you that 200 bucks, right? So then you've got to clear that account out. So that's how vendor posting profiles work. All of the posting profiles allow you quite a bit of flexibility. You can have different rules for vendor groups, so if I want that, or you can actually have a posting profile on an individual vendor, which is pretty flexible. I'd recommend always to do it under either groups or all. When I see clients doing it under table, it gets very unwieldy, very hard to maintain, and often falls over. Okay, so accounts receivable, very similar thing, customer posting profiles, right? So what's going to happen here, right? So the same thing, you can specify between all, group, or table, and it's the same thing. Let's say you invoice your customer. Now what's going to happen is they need to pay you that money, so that would be in a debtor's control account, which is an asset, and then when they do pay you, ultimately that money needs to be reversed, right? So let's say for example they owe you 200 bucks, that gets debited to your debtor's control account. Then when they pay you, you get a credit to that debtor's control account, meaning the debtor's control account balance is zero. That client no longer owes you any money. So that's the posting profile for customers. Fixed assets, this is where you start getting quite complicated, right? So you got fixed asset posting profiles, but now you've got a whole bunch of rules here, and Microsoft loves to make this overly complicated. Most of these you'd never ever use, to be perfectly honest. You're going to use acquisition adjustment, depreciation adjustment, revaluation, and potentially write. But the rest of these you can, and disposal. This is a bit more complicated because you're going to specify the main account and the offset account. If you want further videos, let me know and I'll do one on fixed assets. You also got to be careful that you got to set up your sale and your scrap. These ones can be quite complicated also because it's on a value model. So probably enough information there for a full video. The one that most people will use would be probably inventory. Well, yeah, inventory is probably one of the trickier ones. So let's just go up here. So inventory under here, it's actually under where is it now? Not under reports, it's under item, sorry, not item model groups, it's under item groups. So what this means is, again, Microsoft has made this super complicated, which often causes people to make multiple mistakes. So first of all, you're going to have an item group, which you'll specify. So the only time to create a new item group is if you wanted to have different postings to the ledger. So what's going to happen, right? So let's use this as an example. We've got local products. Every time you have a delivery note, you're going to take it to that main account. Again, this is posting profiles for inventory. This is the predominant screen you'll use to define these. However, this starts getting pretty complicated pretty quickly. Yeah, probably enough material there for another video. Again, look, I'm not doing these videos really anymore. If you've got any questions, just send a comment on the YouTube and I'll respond to them. Yeah, there's probably about an hour or two video worth of detail just in the screen alone. It can get quite complicated. And project management. So this one's pretty cool. We've got postings, we've got project groups, and then you'll also determine, yeah, again, pretty complicated. So I'm not sure what everyone's looking for. If they want me to go into more details on a specific posting profile, posting group, let me know and I can always see if I've got some time to load some more. One of the interesting ones you're going to need to know is in most countries worldwide, they have a sales tax, right? So depending on where you're located, if you're in America, they call it a sales tax. If you're in the UK, they call it VAT, South Africa's VAT, India's GST, Australia, New Zealand's GST. Yeah, so I'm on the Australian version, so it looks like it's all GST, right? But that'll change depending on where you're accessing and what version of AX you're on. And you go ledger posting groups. This one's very important, right? So, I mean, depending on the size of your organization, you're going to want to split your GST payable, receivable, and settlement account into separate accounts. Why do we do this? We do that because it makes it easier to maintain, especially when you think about probably 90% of all transactions will have a sales tax, GST, VAT implication. If you're all taking them to one account, it's going to get complicated pretty quickly. So GST payable, pretty standard, GST receivable, and your settlement account is what happens when you pay that settlement, that figure. Generally what will happen is you want to take GST payable and GST receivable at the end of the month or whenever you have to pay the tax authority, and then that will go into your control account over there. I believe that is the vast majority of the posting profiles that matter. I think you might have some travel expense ones, I'm not sure offhand, but again, let me know if you need any more help, and if there's demand, look, I don't mind doing a quick video for you guys. Okay, cool, take it easy.